Nobody saw it coming. Not the broadcasters. Not the sponsors. Not the executives sitting in their corporate boxes at one of the most prestigious tennis tournaments on the planet. And certainly not the governing body that has been running women's tennis for decades. The WTA thought they knew exactly what this tournament was going to look like. They had their storylines. They had their stars. They had their rivalries mapped out and their media strategy locked in. And then an 84-year-old man changed everything by walking into a stadium and choosing a seat. Not in front of the Italian world number one. Not courtside for any of the marquee matchups that the marketing teams had spent months building anticipation around. He sat down to watch a 20-year-old Filipina who wasn't even seeded to win the tournament. And from that moment, nothing about the Italian Open was ever quite the same again. Let's rewind to the week before it happened, because the full picture matters here. The Foro Italico in early May is one of those places that makes you feel the weight of sport history just by standing in it. Marble statues. Clay courts the color of burnt terracotta. The kind of venue where the atmosphere is almost architectural, built into the walls and the ground itself. The WTA 1000 event draws the best players in the world, and in 2026, the tournament had no shortage of compelling narratives heading in. There was the Italian angle, always powerful on home soil, with the crowd ready to get behind their own. There were the top seeds, the rivalries, the story arcs that tennis journalists had been previewing for weeks. The WTA's communications team in Florida was doing what they always do, monitoring social media trends, coordinating with broadcasters, preparing the press releases and promotional content that frames how the casual viewer understands what they're watching. They had a plan. It was a good plan. And then the phone rang. The call came from a senior Italian government official. The message was short. President Sergio Mattarella would be attending a match at the tournament. That in itself was not unusual. Heads of state attend sporting events. Protocol is adjusted, security is coordinated, seats are arranged. What made this different, what made the WTA communications team stop and read the message twice, was the second part. He wasn't coming to watch the Italians. He was coming to watch Alex. Now, if you need a moment to absorb that, take it. Because in the context of Italian sporting culture, in the context of what the Foro Italico represents to that country, the idea of the president of the Italian Republic bypassing his own nation's top players to sit in the royal box for a third-round match featuring a 20-year-old from the Philippines is not a small thing. Italy has Jannik Sinner. Italy has homegrown heroes. Italian tennis has been experiencing a golden era, and the national pride around that is real and deep and loud. For Mattarella to say, essentially, "I'm not here for any of that. I'm here for her," that was a statement before he had even taken his seat. The WTA scrambled. That's the only word for it. Security protocols were reviewed and revised. Media arrangements were reshuffled. The royal box was reconfigured. Staff who had been focused on a dozen other priorities suddenly found themselves coordinating a presidential visit that nobody had scheduled more than a few days in advance. And through all of that logistical chaos, the same question kept surfacing in every room where WTA officials gathered. Why her? How had this happened? How had Alex, ranked 42 in the world, without a WTA title to her name, without the kind of Grand Slam pedigree that typically earns this level of attention from world leaders, how had she become the reason the president of Italy rearranged his afternoon? The answer, if you had been paying close attention, had been building for weeks. Alex's run through the Italian Open draw had been the kind of thing that converts neutral observers into devoted fans. She wasn't just playing well. She was playing in a way that made people feel something. There's a difference between a technically excellent tennis player and one who makes the crowd hold its breath on every point, and Alex had always lived in the second category. But in Rome, that quality had been amplified by something the WTA had not fully accounted for: the crowd. The Foro Italico had been filling up in unusual ways during her matches. The Philippine flag started early in the week as a few scattered patches of color in the stands and grew, session by session, into something that looked less like a fan section and more like a national gathering. Overseas Filipino workers had been making their way to Rome from every corner of Europe. From London, from Brussels, from Amsterdam, from cities in Germany and Spain and the Gulf states. Nurses in scrubs who had come straight from shifts. Families who had pooled their money for flights and tickets. Community groups who had organized travel the way other people organize pilgrimages, because for many of them, that is exactly what it was. These were people carrying years of quiet sacrifice. Years of working far from home, sending money back, missing birthdays and funerals and ordinary Sundays. Also, their families could have something better. And here was Alex, one of their own, sliding on the clay courts of Rome in front of the whole world. Competing, winning points she had no business winning, making the crowd roar. The chant that became the tournament soundtrack started in the Filipino sections and spread. Laban Alex. Fight Alex. Within days, Italian fans who had never spoken a word of Filipino were chanting it. That is the kind of cultural crossover that cannot be manufactured by any marketing department on earth, and the WTA was watching it happen in real time without fully grasping what it meant. Mattarella grasped it. He had seen the footage. He had heard about the flags and the chants. He had been watching from the outside as something genuinely unusual unfolded at a tournament he had followed for most of his life. And he made a decision. He wanted to see it for himself. When he walked through the players' entrance at the Foro Italico that afternoon, the shift in energy was immediate and unmistakable. He wasn't in formal state attire. He was dressed quietly, appropriately for the occasion, the kind of outfit that says, "I am here to watch, not to be watched." He didn't stop for the usual protocol greetings. He walked directly to the royal box, took his seat in the front row, and fixed his gaze on the court where Alex was warming up. The cameras caught it. They always catch everything at these moments, that slight lean forward, the stillness, the quality of attention that distinguishes genuine interest from ceremonial presence. He was not there to be seen attending a tennis match. He was there to watch Alex play. The Italian fans in the stadium noticed almost immediately. There was a ripple effect, the way there always is when something unexpected happens in a crowd. People looked at each other. Eyebrows went up. And then something interesting happened, something that surprised even the WTA officials watching from their corporate boxes. The Italian fans didn't resent it. They didn't bristle at their president sitting down to cheer for a foreign player. Instead, a quiet wave of respect moved through the stands. Because if the president of the republic had come specifically to watch this young woman from the Philippines, then she was clearly worth watching. The match that followed was not Alex's finest in terms of results. The world number 2 is dominant in the way that top players often are on surfaces they love, her ground strokes heavy and precise, her movement economical and efficient. But Alex made her work. She always makes people work. She broke her serve. She retrieved balls that seemed unreachable and redirected them with a sharpness that had the crowd reacting on instinct, that involuntary gasp that happens when you see something you didn't think was physically possible. Mattarella leaned forward when Alex broke in the second set. An aide sitting beside him said something, and he turned briefly, asked a question, then turned back to the court. The WTA officials who were watching the president as much as the match noted the moment carefully. He wasn't performing interest. He was genuinely absorbed. And all the while, the Philippine flags caught the Roman sunlight, and the chants rolled across the clay, and the overseas workers in the upper tiers of the stadium were on their feet for rallies they would be talking about for years. Then came the ankle. Anyone who watched Alex that week knew that she had been managing a physical issue, the kind that players sometimes try to push through because the tournament matters and the moment matters, and sometimes the heart overrides the body's better judgment. It gave way during the match. Not dramatically, not in a way that stopped play immediately, but enough that the shift in her movement was visible, enough that the crowd's energy changed from excitement to something more protective, more anxious. She could have stopped. Nobody would have questioned it. She had already given the crowd everything they came for, and then some. But she walked to the baseline, shook it off in that quiet way she has, and kept playing. Mattarella watched that. He watched her limp slightly between points and then reset and compete anyway. He watched the Filipino section of the crowd rise together, willing her forward, and he watched her look up at them between games with something in her expression that was not defeat, even though she was losing. When the match ended and the final scoreline had settled, the Foro Italico was not the kind of quiet that follows a forgettable result. It was the kind of quiet that follows something meaningful. Alex sat in her chair. The match was done. And Mattarella stood up. What happened next you already know because it went everywhere. But what happened afterward, behind the closed doors of the WTA's private suites, is the part of the story that tells you where women's tennis might actually be heading. The executives gathered within the hour. The meeting that followed lasted 4 hours, which is a long time for a governing body that runs on tight schedules and tight agendas. The tone in the room, by multiple accounts, was not celebratory. It was closer to unsettled. The kind of atmosphere that settles over a group of intelligent people when they realize they have been missing something obvious for a long time. The data was on the table, and the data was staggering. Television ratings for Alex's matches in the Philippines hadn't just been high. They had been record-breaking, eclipsing the viewership numbers for matches that the WTA had considered its flagship content. Streaming figures across Southeast Asia during her matches had surpassed the numbers for the tournament finals. The social media engagement generated by the flags, the chants, the tears, the sheer visual spectacle of the Filipino diaspora filling a Roman stadium had produced more organic impressions than any promotional campaign the WTA had run all season. One executive reportedly said it plainly. "We have been measuring the wrong things." Another pushed further. "The OFW army is not going away. They are organized, they are passionate, and they spend money. We need to figure out how to support them, not just benefit from them." That distinction matters. Because there is a version of the story where a large corporation looks at what Alex and her community have built and immediately starts thinking about how to monetize it, how to package it, how to put the logo in the right place and take the credit. And there is another version where they sit in a room for 4 hours and genuinely reckon with the fact that they didn't build this. She did, they did. The nurses and the caregivers and the workers with their flags and their chants built it. And the question of what role the WTA should play is more complicated and more important than simply figuring out which sponsors to bring in. The executives were, to their credit, asking the second set of questions. The conversation turned to the WTA's long-standing marketing framework, which had been built almost entirely around rivalries. Match one star against another. Create a narrative of competition between two personalities. Sell the clash. It is a model that works. It has always worked. Federer and Nadal. Williams and Sharapova. The sport has generated its biggest commercial moments from those head-to-head story arcs. But Alex's appeal didn't fit that model. It had nothing to do with who she was playing. It had everything to do with who she was, what she represented, and who showed up to watch her. People don't watch her to see her beat someone. One analyst in the room reportedly said, "They watch her because she represents something. Hope. The possibility of success when the odds are stacked against you." The executives recognized the pattern. They had seen it before, in players who had transcended the sport and become cultural touchstones, in Osaka's conversations about mental health, in the ways certain athletes become vessels for something larger than their results. But they had never seen it happen this fast at this scale, with this little institutional support behind it. "She created herself," one executive said, "and we need to catch up." Then the message arrived from the Quirinal Palace. Mattarella wanted to speak with them directly. The call was not long. It didn't need to be. The president's voice was calm, warm, direct in the way that people who have spent decades in public life can be direct, without edge, without agenda, just clarity. He told them he had attended many sporting events. He had seen championships decided, history made, legends crowned. He was not being dismissive of any of that when he said he had never seen a crowd like the one that gathered for Alex at the Foro Italico.